Hello everyone, welcome back to the new episode of my tutorial series on software development. In the previous episode, we have successfully added a functionality to calculate grand total after discount and tax, and also calculated return amount in our purchase and sales form. In this episode, we will create a functionality to save our transaction and transaction details in database. So without further delay, let's move to our tutorial. So first of all, we'll need to go to our project folder and open our solution file. So I'll just open my project file that is installed the solution. I'll just double click on it and it will open on Visual Studio, since we are creating a desktop application for Windows. So guys, this is our purchase and sales form, and first of all we need to add getter and setter in transaction BLL. I forgot to add one getter and setter in transaction BLL. So let's go to Solution Explorer and I'll just open transaction BLL. So double click on transaction BLL, and here we need to add another getter and setter for transaction details. It is an extra one. We do not have this field in database. It will be used to insert transaction details. So let's press enter after added by and type prop and tab, and it will be of data table data type. So data table, and its name will be transaction details. So don't worry about the error, just hover over the error and click on show potential fixes and click on using system.data. So this is it, our error is solved, I guess. So we have solved the error also. So this will be used to insert transaction details in our purchase and sales form. So press Ctrl and yes to save. Now let's go to our purchase and sales form. So in order to create a functionality to insert transaction and transaction detail in our purchase and sales form, first of all we need to create a button click event. So we need to create a save button click event. So just select the button and double click in it to create a button click event. So I'll just double click on save button. So here we have our button save click event. So when the button save is clicked, first step is to get the values or get the details from the form, like details of the customer, details of the product, product added, not products from here, but products added in data grid view, and total, discount, VAT, grand total, etc. So let's go to the code, that is purchase and sales.cs, and here we need to get the values. Get the values from purchase sales form first. So let's go to our server explorer and let's expand our database in store, and let's expand tables, and let's expand transaction tbl underscore transaction table. So first we have type and dcost id, grand total, transaction date, tax, discount, and added by. So first we need to create an object of our transaction class. So transactions BLL transaction is equals to new and transaction BLL. So that's it. And now first we need to get type of transaction which is displayed on our this label. So let's get the name of this label, which is LBL top. So this shows whether it is a purchase or sales. So based on that label we will add a value in database. So tran as a transaction dot type is equals to LBL top dot text, and similarly we need to add dcost id, which is id of dealer or customer. So here for that, first of all we will get the name of the dealer or customer, and based on that name we will get the id. For that we need to create another method in dcostdal. So first let's get the name of the dealer or customer. Get the id of dealer or customer here. For that let's get name of the dealer or customer first. So string dcost name is equals to txt name dot text. So this will give the name of the dealer or customer in our string dcost name variable. Then let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S, and we need to create a method in dcostdal to get the id by name. So let's go to dcostdal, minimize this, let's expand dal folder, and let's go to dcostdal, and here we need to create a method. For that I'll create a region has region method to get id of the dealer or customer based on name has in region. So between this region we will create a method to get the id of dealer or customer based on dealer or customer name. So let's create a method. So public dcostdal get id dcost id from name, and we will pass a string name. So here we need to, don't worry about the error, we need to create a object of dcostdal, and we need to return it in order to solve that error. So first create an object of dcostdal and return it. So dcostdal dc is equals to new dcostdal and then return dc. So this solves the error. Now we need to create a database connection. For that, connection here. So SQL connection con is equals to new SQL connection. Inside here my connection is string we created at the top, and then we need to create a data table to hold the data for temporarily. Data table to hold the data temporarily. So data table dt is equals to new data table, and then we will write the actual code to get the id of dealer or customer based on name. So we will start with try block. So try and then catch exception ex, and we will display any message if we have any exceptional errors. So message box dot show ex dot message, and last one is finally. So here we will close the database connection. So connection dot close. Now we will write the actual code inside the try block to get the id of the user dealer or customer based on dealer or customer name. So here we will write the query first, which is SQL query to get id based on name. So let's go to Server Explorer and let's expand our dealer and customer table. So we have type and ID. Based on ID we need to get name. So string SQL is equals to select ID from tbl underscore d underscore cost. Select ID from tbl underscore cost, where name is equals to single quote and then double quote and between double quote plus plus and between plus name. So that's it. This query will get the ID of dealer or customer based on name. Now we need to create a SQL data adapter to execute the query. So create the SQL data adapter to execute the query. So SQL data adapter is equals to new SQL data adapter, and using SQL and connection, and then we need to open a database connection. So connection dot open, and after that we need to pass the value from SQL data adapter to data table. So passing the value from adapter to data table. So adapter dot fill, and will pass by this code will pass the value from adapter to dt. Now if we have successfully executed the query and has some value on adapter and is passed on dt, then dt has some value. So when data table has value, then we need to pass that value to our dealer or customer BLL and inside the dc object. So let's check it out. So if dt dot rows dot count is greater than 0, then pass the value from dt to d cost bll dc. So dc dot id is equals to int dot parse, and then dt dot rows and 0, and then id and dot to string. So this will pass the value from dt data table to our dealer and customer BLL object dc. So this is it, guys. We have successfully created a method to get ID from name for dealer and customer. So let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S. Let's minimize this. Now let's get back to the purchase and sales form code view, and here now we need to use that method from dealer and customer DAL to get the ID of dealer or customer from dcost name. So dcost bll dc is equals to, we need to create a DAL for dealer or customer. Let's create the DAL for dealer or customer at the top. So I'll go to the top, and here let's create a DAL for dealer or customer. We already created a dealer or customer DAL, so we do not need to create another. I did not see before, so let's go to the code and use that. So dc is equal to dc DAL dot get dcost id from name, and we will pass dcost name. So that's it. This will get the value or ID of the dealer or customer based on name and save it in dc, but we need to pass this value dealer ID of the dealer or customer in our transaction BLL. So transaction dot dcost id is equals to dc dot id. So that's it. So we have the ID of dealer or customer. Now next we need to get the value of, let's go to the server explorer and check it out. Now we have, let's expand transaction details. Now we have the type and dcus id. Now we need to get grand total and transaction date and tax. So let's find the grand total. So transaction dot grand total is equals to txt grand total dot text, but the grand total is decimal data type, so we need to convert it. So decimal dot parse and then parenthesis close, and next one is, let's see in server explorer, grand total and then transaction date and tax discount. So transaction date, transaction dot transaction date is equals to date time dot now. This will get the current date and time. We do not need this one, I think. Yes, and then we need to pass transaction discount, which is, yes, tax and discount. So let's go with tax first. Transaction dot tax is equals to txt tax, what is tax, txt vat. So this is vat, txt vat dot text, and we need to convert it. So decimal dot parse and parenthesis close, and another one is discount. So transaction dot discount is equals to decimal dot parse and then txt discount dot text. So that's it. Now we have all the variable, I guess. Now last one is added by. We need to get the ID of the user who is logged into our system. So for that, first step is to get the username of logged in user. So string username is equals to frm login dot logged in. So this will give the username of logged in user from login form, and then we need to pass it to user bll. So user bll u is equals to udal. So we have not created object of user dal. So first we need to create a object of user dal. So let's go to the top, and after product dal, let's create a dal for user. So user dal udal is equals to new udal. That's it. Now we'll use this to get the ID of user. So udal dot get ID from username. So now we need to pass the username of the user. So username, that's it. Now we have the ID of the logged in user in this user BLL object u, but we need to pass to our transaction object. So transaction dot added by is equals to u dot id. So that's it. We have successfully obtained all the values for our transaction table, that is type, dcus id, grand total, transaction date, tax, discount and added by, and id will be auto generated. So our next step is to insert the transaction in our transaction table. So let's do that, but before inserting a transaction, we need to create a boolean variable and set its default value to false. So let's create a boolean variable and set its value to false. So bool success is equals to false, and I think we also forgot to pass the value in transaction detail getter and setter that we created in the beginning of this tutorial, that is transaction dot transaction details is equals to, here we'll pass data table transaction dt, which is transaction dt we created in earlier episode. So that's it. Now we will start to write the actual code to insert the transaction in our database. For that we need to use a transaction scope. So let's start that. Actual code to insert transaction and transaction details. So using transaction scope is equals to new transaction scope and parenthesis close and curly braces open, and hover over the error and click on show potential fixes, and we need to add a reference for that. So let's go to the solution explorer and let's go to reference, right click on references and click on add reference. So here search for Microsoft SQL system.transactions and let's click on OK. So we have added our new using system.transactions. So that's it. Now hover over the error and click on show potential fixes and using system.transactions. So we solved our error. Now we need to write the actual code to insert the transaction inside the database. For that I will create a transaction ID. So int transaction ID is equals to -1 and set its value to -1, and let's create a boolean value. Create a boolean value and insert transaction so bool, I will give its name to w and is equals to, we haven't created a DL for our transaction, so I'll create a DL for transaction as well as transaction details. So transactions DL TDAL is equals to new and transaction DL, and similarly for transaction detail, transaction detail DL TDDAL is equals to new and then transaction detail DL. So that's it. Now let's go to our code, and here we will use TDAL, that is transaction DAL dot insert transaction, and we will pass transaction, where is TRA transaction. So that's it. And we also need to pass transaction ID, transaction TRA and transaction ID. So that's it. Out transaction ID. So that's it. So this is, guys, we have successfully added a code to insert a transaction in our database. In transaction detail we have multiple products, so we will use for loop to insert the transaction details. So use for loop to insert transaction details. So for int I is equals to 0, I less than transaction dt dot rows dot count and then I plus plus, start a curly braces, and inside here we will get all the details of products and insert in transaction details table. So first step is to get all the details of the product. For that, let's see our server explorer and let's check our transaction detail table. So in transaction detail we need product ID, rate, quantity, total, decost ID, added date and added by. So here we need to create another BLL, which is transaction detail BL TD transaction detail is equals to new, and then transaction detail BLL. Now here we will get all the details of the product, like product ID, rate, quantity. So for getting the product ID, we need to create a method to get the ID based on product name. So first step is to get the product name and convert it to ID. So string product name is equals to txt product name dot text. So that's it, we have the name, product name, but we need a product ID. For that we need to create a method in product DL to get the ID based on name. So let's go to Solution Explorer and let's go to products DL. So products DL, and here we need to create a method to get ID based on product name. So I'll create a region. So as region method to get product ID based on product name, and has in region. Here I will use a shortcut which is copying the same method from dcostdal we created earlier. So I'll go to dcostdal and I'll just expand the last method which is getting the ID based on dcost name. So just copy this, copy before the end region and press Ctrl and C to copy, and I'll paste it inside products.dal here. So paste it here by pressing Ctrl and V, and here we need to change dcost BLL to products BLL and get not dcost ID, product ID from name, and we'll change its string to product name. And here we do not need dcost BLL, here we need products BLL, and let's copy it and paste it here, and this will be P only, not DC. So here we need to type product name we created here, select ID from TBL products, change the query products where name, do we have name, Server Explorer TBL products, TBL product, yes we have name. So that's okay, name is equals to product name, this is okay. And here we need to get not DC, here P, and ID and return P. So that's it. What changes we did is we changed the name of business logic layer product from dcost BLL to we changed to product BLL, then change dcost ID to product ID and change name to product name. And here we also change dcost BLL to products BLL and change DC to P and dcost BLL to products BLL. And here we do not make any changes here. Here we changed the table name, before it was TVL dcost, and change it to TVL products and change name to product name, same as this. And here we change DC to P, and here we change DC to P. That's it. Let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S, and we'll use this method to get the product ID from product name. So let's go to form, purchase and sale. Here we have product name, and here product BLL P is equals to PDAL dot get product ID from name, and we will pass product name. So that's it. Now this P object of product BLL has the ID of product based on product name. Now we need to pass that ID to transaction detail BLL. So transaction detail dot product ID is equals to P dot ID. So that's it, we have the product ID. Now we need, let's go to Server Explorer, let's minimize this. Now we have product ID. Now we need rate, quantity and total. Now we will get the rate from transaction dt, which we created at the top, which is this transaction dt. We will get the rate and quantity and total from here. So the rate is on second column, so it will be its index will be 1, its index will be 0, its index will be 1, its index will be 2, and its index will be 3. So we have rate with 1 index, quantity with 2, and total with 3. So we'll use that to get the rate, quantity, and total. So transaction detail dot rate is equals to decimal dot parse transaction dt dot rows, and then we will pass I from for loop, and inside this we will pass the index of rate, which is 1, and dot to string. So that's it. This will give the rate from our transaction data table. Now we need to get transaction quantity, rate, quantity, and total. So transaction detail dot qty is equals to decimal dot parse, and then transaction dt dot rows, and I, and then 2, and then dot to string, not dot here, to string. So that's it. So this will get the quantity from transaction data table. Similarly we need to get total also. So transaction detail dot total is equals to decimal dot parse transaction dt dot rows, and then I, and then 3 dot to string, now semicolon. So that's it. We have rate, quantity, total, product ID. Now another one we need is dcost ID. So for dcost ID we will use the code from here. So transaction.dcost ID. So I'll just copy this one, Control C, and paste inside this. Or we do not need, I think we can just use this DC to pass the dcost ID here. So I'll just use transaction detail dot dcost ID is equals to, let's copy this. So I'll just copy this, not this but here, dc.id. let's copy this and paste it here. So that's it. This will give the dcost ID. We have already obtained the dcost ID for transaction. We do not need to obtain again. So I just reused the code from above. Now another one we need is added date and added by. So transaction detail dot added date is equals to date time dot now, and the last one is transaction detail dot added by. So here we will use this code from above, which is u.id. So u.id, I don't want to write the same code twice, so I just copy it from earlier. Now finally we will insert transaction details inside the database. For that we will create a boolean value. So it will be bool w is equals to, so we also need to, we have already created a object for transaction detail DL. So tddal dot insert transaction detail, and here we'll pass transaction detail. So that's it. I forgot W Y, so I'll pass Y. we will set the value of boolean value success we created in the first, and this will be success is equals to w and y semicolon. So the value of success will be the combination of w and y. Y is the value after inserting the transaction details, and w is the value after inserting transaction. So if the transaction and transaction detail is inserted successfully, then our transaction will be completed. So if success is equals to true, and then transaction complete, else transaction failed. So when transaction is complete, we need to display message. So message box dot show transaction completed fully, and else message box dot show transaction failed. So that's it. Now let's check it out once again. Let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S, and let's check it out. Let's start. Now let's log in with user credentials, which is user, password is user, and user type is user. Let's log in successful. Now click on purchase, and we don't have user 4 user ID, so 3. I'll search product 2, quantity will be 4, add, and another one is 4, quantity will be 2, and let's add. Let's discount of 3%, VAT of 5%, and paid amount 500. Let's save it by pressing Ctrl. Now let's save by pressing on button save. So transaction fail. I think we have an error. So we need to close the form, close this and close this and close this. Let's create a breakpoint here. So let's create a breakpoint here, and let's run the project. User, password is user, and user type is user, and login successful. Purchase 3, 2, 4, add, search 4, 5, add, discount 3, tax 5, paid amount 500, and not 500, 590, and let's click on save. Now let's check our query, and let's try to find the error. I'll just go type, it has value, so purchase, and go deal cost BLL. So here let's see if this gives us the value or not. So we have ID 3, it's working perfectly. Let's go to another. So name Gigi Hadid, DC, it has value, so because ID is 3. Now grand total 582, and transaction date, so that's okay. Grand total, I think we have error on grand total, because in database we are only passing 2 values after decimal. After decimal we are allowing to insert only 2 values, but here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this might be causing the error. So let's try to fix it. I think this might be the problem. So let's stop the project and let's try to fix this. So here grand total, let's pass only 2 values after decimal. So I'll just use math function, math dot round, and that parenthesis open, and after here we'll pass comma and 2, and parenthesis close. So this will pass only two values after the decimal. So let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S. And similarly for total we will use same. So math dot round and parenthesis open, and at last comma 2 and parenthesis close. Let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S. We need to add this code after success. We need to add this code after the for loop. So I'll just cut here, and I will paste it after for loop. So paste it here. So success is equal to, and so we will only get a message one time. So after the transaction is completed, we need to clear the data grid view and clear all the text boxes. So first, clearing the data grid view. For that, dgv added products dot data source is equals to null, and then dgv products dot rows dot clear. So this will clear all the data grid view, and now we need to clear the text boxes as well. So let's search for the text boxes. We have search email address. From this, all of the text boxes should be empty. So I'll start with search txt search dot text is equals to blank, and then txt name dot text is equals to blank, and then txt email dot text is equals to blank, and then txt contact dot text is equals to blank, and then txt address dot text is equals to blank. And then we cleared all these text boxes. Now we need to clear these text boxes. So search txt product dot text is equals to blank, and txt product name dot text is equals to blank, and then txt inventory dot text is equals to 0, and then txt rate dot text is equals to 0, and then txt qty dot text is equals to 0. And similarly, let's clear these fields, which is subtotal, discount, VAT. So start with subtotal. Txt subtotal dot text is equals to 0, txt discount dot text is equals to 0, and txt VAT dot text is equals to 0, and txt grand total dot text is equals to 0, and then txt paid amount dot text is equals to 0, and last one is txt return amount dot text is equals to 0. So that's it. Let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S. Let's start and check it out. I think we have an error. No, where do we have error? What's the error? But error is here. So this will be Ctrl X here, Ctrl V, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, Ctrl X, and paste it here, Ctrl V. So that's it. Let's save it by pressing Ctrl S. I just cut the success is equal to W is equal to X and Y, and paste it after the bool Y. just do this, just cut the code. Success is equals to w and y inside the for loop, and save it and paste it and save by pressing Ctrl and S. So after the transaction is complete, we need to complete the transaction scope. If we, which is this, if we do not complete the transaction scope, then the data will not be inserted into database. So in order to insert transaction and transaction detail into database, we need to complete the transaction scope. For that, I will write, after when success is equals to true, we need to write scope dot complete. So this will specify that the transaction and transaction detail scope is complete, and it is ready to insert the data into database. So after writing this code, the data will be inserted successfully into the database. So we have an error on transaction DL. The error is on SQL query. So here, since this is a transaction, we are using transaction scope, it gives high priority to security, so it needs to give username or password. Since we are not connected, we are not using username or password to connect database, we need to get identity. So you need to go to the SQL query in string SQL, go to the end of the query, and after parenthesis just add semicolon and add select @ identity. So that's it. So this will solve the error. This just add this, and at last add semicolon. So this query, after the SQL query, will solve our error. Since using transaction scope requires high security, we are providing this identity, which is our default username and password. So use select @ IDENTITY identity. So that's it, guys. Let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S, and let's start our project to check it out if this works or not. So user password is user, and user type is user. Login successful. Purchase 3 and product 2, quantity 4, add, and 4 quantity 5 and add, and discount 4%, VAT 5%, and paid amount will be 600 rupees, and let's save it. So transaction completed successfully. Let's click on OK. So this is it. Now let's check it out if the data is inserted into database or not. For that, I will go to database. Let's start Microsoft SQL Server, connect local database, connect, and I'll go to my database. So any store and tables and TBL under, just select the TBL underscore transactions and right click on it and select top 1000 rows. So data is successfully inserted. Let's select the transaction detail and check the data inserted into it. So I'll just right click on transaction details and select top 1000 rows. So we have also successfully added, but the product ID is not shown here. It is showing 00. I think we have some errors. So let's go to our code and store, and so in order to solve the problem we are getting on transaction details in product ID column, we need to get the product name not from text box but from transaction data table, which is transaction dt dot rows, not row change, rows, and then I, and then 0 dot to string. That's it, and that's it. So let's save it by pressing Ctrl and S. We are giving the index 0 because it's on the first in our data tables. Here let's see, so it is in the first, so it will be 0 and 1 2 3. So we are passing the product name from data table, not from the text box. So let's check it out once again. So I'll just click on start. User and user type is user. Login successful. Purchase 3 and 2, quantity 5, add 3, and then 4, add discount 4%, VAT 6%, paid amount 200 rupees, and let's click on save. Transaction completed successfully. So let's close it, and let's close it. Let's go to our SQL server, and here I'll just select this one and execute it. So now we have successfully getting the product ID of the respective product. You might not have 3 and 4 because I did in background. So 2 and 3, we are getting the product ID successfully. So this is it. We have also solved the problem in our transaction detail table, and now we are good to move on another episode. We have successfully inserted transaction and transaction detail in a database, but we haven't increased or decreased the quantity of product when we purchase or sales. Now we will add a functionality to increase the quantity when the product is purchased and decrease the quantity when the product is sales in TVL products table. This functionality will be added in next episode. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. If you have any confusion related to this video, then don't forget to comment. I'll reply as soon as possible. So till then, see you soon. Bye bye.